Hello everyone, welcome to Learn with Wasim. This is Muhammad Wasim Khan, an instructor of your project planning and management course. As you know that in the previous lecture, we have discussed the two basic processes of the project cost management. And those processes were plan cost management and estimate the cost. Today, we are going to discuss the remaining two processes, that is determining the budget and control cost of the project cost management. So let's start with determining the budget. So what is determining the budget? Determined budget is actually a process of aggregating the estimated cost of individual activities or work packages to establish an authorized cost baseline. So determining budget is actually a process in which we integrate, in which we aggregate actually the estimated cost of each and every activity and work package in order to establish the authorized cost baseline or the cost target. So this baseline include all the authorized budget except the management reserves. We can have some inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs in determining the budget. So most of the inputs we have actually discussed in the previous lectures. We are not going to explain those inputs here. The input that we have discussed is activity cost estimates. We discussed that this input in the previous lecture. Then the basis of estimates, then scope baseline, and the project schedule. And you know that in what we do in project schedule is to plan the start and finish dates for each and every project activity. Okay, and then identify the milestone and the work packages and planning packages and control accounts. So we can have the resource calendars as well, and you know that resource calendars are actually the calendars that provide information on which resources are assigned to the project and with and when they are assigned. So these basic idea and information are is represented by the resource calendar. Then we have contracts. Contracts are actually applicable contract information and costs relating to products, services, and results that have been purchased. So contracts are actually the contract information and the costs relating to the products, the services, and results that have been purchased. Then we have the organizational process assets, and we have actually we were done with the organizational process assets in the previous lectures. So then the next we have is the tools and techniques. So the first tool is the cost aggregation. You know how to aggregate the values. So here in tools and in cost aggregation tool, we actually aggregate the cost. So cost estimates are actually aggregated by work packages in accordance with the work breakdown structure. So as I told you that in the work breakdown structure, we actually divide the project into the control accounts and then control accounts into different major activities and the minor activities. So in cost aggregation, we actually start to aggregate the cost from down the or from the bottom of the work breakdown structure, that is the minor activities, to the top of the work breakdown structure, that is the project. Okay, so the work package cost estimates are then integrated for sorry, aggregated for the higher component levels of the work breakdown structure. So you know that we have discussed the rolled up or the bottom up estimation. So in that estimation too, or in that method too, we have actually identified the cost of the project or estimated the cost of the project by rolling up from the lower level activities to the top project. So we can have the reserve analysis as well, and you know that we have two reserves that we actually focus on in our project. The first one is contingency reserve, and these are actually those reserves that are allow that are for unplanned but potentially required changes that can result from realized risk. So contingency reserves are actually kept for the risks that have already been realized and identified. And management reserves are actually those reserves that are usually kept for the risks that are not realized yet. Okay, so these are the two basic reserves, and we have already discussed these reserve analysis in the previous chapter, that is project schedule management. Then we have expert judgment. So I'll just go through the expert judgment here because we have discussed this particular topic again and again. So a judgment provided based upon expertise in an application area, knowledge area, discipline, industry, etc., should be used in determining the budget. So such expertise may be provided by any group or person with specialized education, knowledge, skill, experience, or training. Then we have the historical relationships. Any historical relationship that result in parametric estimate or the analogous estimate involve the use of the project characteristics or parameters to develop the mathematical models to predict the total project cost. So I think we don't need to explain it in details because we have already discussed the parametric estimation and analogous estimation, in which we actually focus on the previous similar projects or the past similar projects, and we focus on that particular information. Okay, and based on those past data, we actually estimate the cost and the schedules, etc., for the future projects. Then we have the funding limit reconciliation. So the expenditure of funds should be reconciled with any funding limits on the commitment of funds for the project. Then, okay, look at this particular graph. This graph is very important, I would say, and you should focus on this particular graph, that what actually this graph says. So this is called the S curve. We call it the S curves. Um, this particular graph is called the S curve because it is, somewhat similar to the S. You can see this. Yeah, this is somewhat similar to S. Okay, yeah. So this is called the S curve, and at the x-axis of this curve, we have the time. Okay, the time in days or weeks or months, and on the y-axis we have the cumulative values. The cumulative values mean the costs or the budget of a project. Okay, yeah, so the cost and or budget of the project. So you can say, for example, the time we have here on the x-axis is the 1 month, 2 month, a third month, that is the fourth month, fifth month, sixth month, seventh month, eighth month, and 9 month, okay, 10 month, 11, and let's say 12, okay, and 13. So these are actually, there are, for example, we can say that we have 13 months a time for this particular project, okay. Uh, this x-axis actually represent the time values. So these are actually different durations that you can see here, and we can have the I would say the BAC, the budget at completion line. So this line is called budget at completion. Budget at completion mean that BAC or budget and completion mean that, for example, we have decided that our project will be completed in this particular budget up to this level. Okay, our project will be completed in a budget up to this level. You can see. So this is called the budget at completion. And these are actually in the cost in millions of dollars or euros or rupees. Okay. We can have another dotted line here. And this is actually the dotted or dashed lines that you can see here. And these are actually the funding requirements at different period of time. For example, in the first 5 months, and this is actually the initiation of the project from 0 to 5 months. We need this amount of funds. We need this amount of funds in the first 5 months. And for example, in the let's say 6th month, or in between the 6 or 7 month, we need this amount of you know, this amount of funds. Okay, or if we can say, for example, in the 10 month, okay, we need this amount of funds. So these are actually the funds that are required for each and every interval or duration of the project. Okay, then we can have another dotted line that you can see here, and this is the you know, the actual cost in a project, you know, the cost of a project that is you know, spent actually in a particular project. So this line is somewhat above the you know, budget at completion value. And you can see that these are actually the management reserves. So we can say that we have used about 40 or 50% of the management reserves. Okay, we have used about 40 or 50% of the management reserves. Okay, because we have decided to complete the project at the budgeted completion mean at this particular value, but we have completed the project at this value. Okay, so this is actually that means that we have actually used about 40% of the management reserve, or 50% of the management reserves. So yeah, that was all about this particular curve. So I hope you can you understood this particular graph easily, and it would be very easy for you to interpret this graph. Then we have some output, and what should be the output? The output should be the cost performance baseline. The cost performance baseline is actually an authorized time phase budget at completion, which is used to measure, monitor, and control the overall cost performance on the project. So the cost performance baseline is actually a authorized time phase, authorized time period budget, you know, time phase budget at completion. And this budget at completion, that is we have discussed in the previous graph, that is used to measure the and monitor and control the overall cost performance of the project. Okay, so it is developed as a summation of the approved budget by the time period, and is typically displayed in the form of the S curve that you can see here on the screen. So this is the S curve and budget at completion. Then the project funding requirements, the total funding requirements, and you know, periodic funding requirements are derived from the cost baseline. The cost baseline will include projected expenditures, thus anticipated liabilities, and funding often occurs in incremental amounts that are not continuous, which appear as steps. So you can see here, these are the steps. We are actually talking about these steps. So these are not continuous, but we can say these are actually the uh, incremental amounts. So these you know, steps are called the project funding requirements. And then the project documents update. So you know that when we identify something new in our project, then we will go back toward the planning when we or the relevant documents, and we will update those particular documents. Okay, now the last process we have in project cost management is the control cost. So control cost is a process of monitoring the status of a project to update the project cost and manage changes to the cost baseline. So it is actually a process in which we monitor the status of the project cost at different points or at different time periods within a particular project. And we need to manage, the changes in the cost baseline, or changes in the cost at different um, points within a project. So that is control cost process. And the key benefit of this process is that it provides the means to recognize variation from the plan in order to take corrective action and minimize the risk. So yes, the key benefit of control cost is that we need to recognize where is the greater variance or the difference between the actual and the planned values. So based on those variance or difference between the planned and actual values, we can take the corrective action and minimize risks. So for control cost, we have the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. So the inputs are again the project management plan that we have discussed in the project integration management, the project funding requirements that we have discussed, a few minutes, earlier, and then we have the work performance data. So you know that what actually the work performance data is, and again organization process assets. So we are not going to discuss these things because we have already discussed these inputs many times. So let's talk about the important topics, and these topics are the tools and techniques. So the first tool and technique is the earned value management, and earned value management is actually a methodology. It is a method, or it is a technique that combine the scope measurement, the schedule measurement, and resource measurement to assess, to evaluate the project performance and progress. So earned value management is actually a methodology which is used for evaluating the project performance. And we evaluate the project performance based on the scope, schedule, and resources. So it is commonly used method of performance measurement for projects, and it integrates the scope baseline with the cost baseline along with the schedule baseline, and these are when they combine, so they form the performance baseline. And based on this performance baseline, we actually evaluate the performance of any project. Then we have forecasting. And what actually the forecasting is, so I hope you know that forecasting is actually predicting the future events. Okay, so forecasting, as the project progresses, the project team may develop a forecast for estimating the for the estimated completion that may differ from the budgeted completion. So forecasting the estimated completion involves making projections to or projections of conditions and events in the project's future based on current performance information. Then we can have the performance review. So yes, you can review the performance of the project while controlling the cost. So the performance review compare the cost performance over time, the scheduled activities or work packages overrunning and underrunning the budget, and estimate the funds that are needed to complete the work in progress. So for these purposes, we actually perform the performance review. And there are three basic analyses that we actually perform or we undertake in the performance review. The first one is the variance analysis. Then variance analysis is actually the explanation of for cost. Explanation means it identify the causes for cost, the impact on cost, and the corrective actions that are required to manage the cost. So that for these purposes, we use the variance analysis. And the trend analysis examines, identifies the project performance over time to determine if performance is improving or deteriorating. And the third one is earned value performance. Earned value performance compares the performance measurement baseline to actual schedule and cost performance. So you know that we have discussed the earned value management, and these are the similar things. So earned value performance is actually compare the performance measure baseline or to the with the actual performance. And actual performance include the cost performance and the schedule performance. So please remember that. And then we have the project management software. So we, as you know, we have discussed many times that, yeah, we can use different project management softwares for evaluating the performance or controlling the costs. And the reserve analysis. So again, the reserve analysis for, we have two basic reserve, and that is contingency reserve and management reserve. and we have discussed these two reserves again uh, multiple times in the previous lectures. Okay, the output that we will achieve, in the control cost process is the work performance information. The work performance information means the cost variance, the schedule variance, the cost performance index, the schedule performance index, the total cost performance index, variance. Um, um, what is VSE? Okay, I forgot it. Values for work breakdown structure components, in particular, the work packages and control accounts are documented and communicated to stakeholders. So we will discuss these things, inshallah, I hope, in earned value management chapter. We will have a separate chapter, and in this particular chapter, we will discuss these different topics briefly, inshallah. Then we have the cost performance, cost forecast, sorry. So either a calculated estimate at completion value or a bottom-up estimated completion value is documented and communicated to the stakeholders. Then the change request. So you know that we need, if you want to perform any changes, then you need to send the change request first. And after approval of the request, you can do that those changes. And the project management plan updates and the project documents updates and organization process asset update, these things are the same. So, and we have discussed these things many times. So, in this particular chapter, we have discussed, or in this particular lecture, we have discussed what is the determined budget process and its inputs to the techniques and outputs. We have discussed the cost aggregation, the S curve, the cost performance baseline, and how to control the cost and its process, including the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. So that's the end of the chapter. Now, if you have any question, you can please ask me using my email, through my email or my WhatsApp number. That's upon you. But before leaving, I would like to tell you that please go to the Learn with Wasim YouTube channel and subscribe it and press the bell icon. And also please follow and like the Learn with Wasim Facebook page. Uh, okay, so that's the end of this particular um, chapter. Uh, you can ask me any question using the information that is presented in front of you. Thank you. Bye bye.